Broadcast. Let me, in fact, start off by asking you this. Now, Donald Trump is saying that India will not buy that much oil from Russia. Does this indicate a change from his previous rhetoric for India to stop purchasing Russian oil altogether?
So yes, I think there is a change in stance, but again, from an Indian perspective, I think the government has clarified that there was no direct communication of any such sort of committing, Indian government committing to reduce import. However, if you see the data, close to 34 to 40% of India's crude is imported from Russia. And in August, it was 1.72 million barrels per day, and this came down to 1.62 million barrels per day in September. And maybe this is one data pointer which probably is indicating that India is reducing its import from Russia. But if you, read the fine print further, you would find that state-owned refineries have reduced the import, but the private companies have still continued purchasing the Russian oil. And this, it's again very difficult to change the supplier overnight. Also, India prices onshore, so your crude may be of any price in when you extract it, but the costing that the Indian government charges is onshore. So when you deliver it onshore, so including logistics and everything, the pricing is what Indian government looks at. So
Right.
when Donald Trump says that he's looking at government to diversify or reduce, so I think it's definitely a softer stance than previously mentioned.
Interesting. Now, previously, Donald Trump has also said that India can go back to purchasing Russian oil once this war ends. So do you think, in your assessment, this is just a short-term demand that Donald Trump is putting forth, or is there something long-term and strategic that Donald Trump is indicating here?
Right. So I think since the beginning, since April, I was on your channel, and we discussed this. I think this entire concept that Donald Trump is following of pressurizing before coming to a negotiating table. In academics, it's a classic game theory concept where you try to put maximum pressure and before you meet or have a discussion. And I believe the trade talks are still going on. So this is one of the negotiating tactics that Donald Trump likes to follow, and he has done this with many other countries who have agreed to certain terms and conditions, which in I think normal state of mind you may not want to accept it. Like for example, EU has accepted to any EU export going to US is taxed at or tariff is at 15%, whereas US goods in EU is at 0%. So, but again, before that, the tariff was 50%, 100%, and then when negotiation happened, this is what you agree at. So this is, I think, a classic Trump style of negotiating. I'm not sure there is a strategic angle to this because it's very difficult to drive these decisions because India already has a very diversified basket. So it is already purchasing from Nigeria, from the Gulf states, from
Right.
even in the past from Latin American countries. So I don't see this as a strategic move, but it's more of a tactical thing to bring India on a negotiating table and also to somehow pressurize even Russia to come or agree to stop the war.
Right. Interesting. And also, Donald Trump has sought to try and reach his geopolitical objectives through his trade war. In your assessment, the pressure that he's putting on India to stop purchasing Russian oil, is this an attempt by Donald Trump to drive a wedge between India and Russia, which has had a fantastic equation for the last 7 decades?
Exactly. I think the idea is that when you can't the war is happening between Russia and Ukraine, and you are not able to, if I'm allowed to say, stop that war directly. So there's an indirect pressure being put on countries which are trading with them. So, and this is not the first time India has been pressurized for such things with respect to Russia, but I mean in terms of crude purchase, India is one of the largest purchaser of crude, and similar things were done to India in from 2012 to 2015 when Iran was sanctioned and India was heavily relying on Iran consumption because of sanctions on Iran. it did impact the crude oil market. So, I mean, we have seen this in the past, but I think this is more of a leverage being used to dictate terms to India in terms of trying to see if India can find an alternative and also try to reduce its purchase of crude oil. Also, Indian government in last some 4 to 5 years has also diversified in terms of ethanol blending. So now we have 20% blending of ethanol. That also reduces your reliance on direct crude oil import. But I mean, it's a long journey. I mean, as a developing country, our needs are much higher than the current consumption, and we need to find alternative. And if you allow such crude shocks to come to the economy, I mean, the growth that we are seeing may get halted. So to some extent, I would say the government also has very few choice if given in terms of purchasing, because the biggest supplier is Venezuela or Iran or Russia. And out of these three, two of them are sanctioned countries. And then,
Right.
of course, you have GCC and other countries. But then when you choke the supply, there are very few alternatives available for world's second largest buyer of crude oil.
Interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Suyash Bhatt, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you.